profession, then of course you are talking about both. So I will refer to nurses, but in your context, call it both. Next slide, please. So, the report, the Triple Impact report, talked about nursing and midwifery and the 23 million qualified nurses worldwide. That makes half of the professional healthcare workforce. In Pakistan, it's not quite the same, and those figures are set to change. In some of the African countries, almost 80% of the workforce are nurses. And midwives. So if you want to make an improvement, the thing to do is to focus on upskilling, upgrading, and better valuing the nurses and midwives. We also know that nurses feel systematically undervalued. And although overworked, their skills are underutilised. They are not allowed often to work to the top of their professional game. And I know from talking to nurses here in Pakistan, that's certainly the case. We need nurses in the future to be skilled, empowered, enabled, and allowed to work to the top of their profession. We need nurses to get more leadership skills right from the start of their training as students to the top of their profession. We need a seat at the table. And if there isn't a seat at the table, nurses, I ask you to go and find a seat and take it to the table. Get your place. Policy making about health without nurses will not take us to where we want to be. I said this morning something which seemed to resonate with many of the people in the audience, which was nothing about us without us. Next slide. So I want to tell you a little bit about the campaign. It was launched almost a year ago in February 2018. So we had a launch in London, which was led by Lord Crisp, and also we had at that our campaign patron, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her. But at the same time, in Geneva at the World Health Organization, we had Dr. Tedros, who is in town today. He's here, and he was at the event this morning, the Director General of the World Health Organization. He and Princess Muna, who is from Jordan, had a launch there, and together we joined up by technology. Also in Jamaica, in South Africa, and several other countries, Uganda, they were having launches at the same time, and all of them were linked. You know, how fantastic that the world can become one in this day and age. So here it was. This is the lineup from the launch. Over at this side is Lord Crisp. Now, if anybody gets a chance to read some of his work, you should. He used to be the chief executive for the NHS, the National Health Service in England. That is one of the biggest jobs in the world. He's not a doctor, he's not a nurse, he's a policy maker. He's a politician now. So Lord Crisp, he wrote a wonderful book called Turning the World Upside Down. It's about what we can learn from other countries. It's not always about telling people what to do. So that was great. Next to him is a mental health nurse who has become a baroness. A wonderful appointment for a nurse to be in England. I'm going to miss out the lovely lady in the middle, but next to her is Elizabeth Iro, the newly appointed, well actually a year on now, but she was appointed by Dr. Tedros as soon as he came into his position as the Director General at the World Health Organization as the first at that level nurse. So the chief nurse really for the World Health Organization, Elizabeth Iro. Elizabeth is wonderful, and if you ever get the chance to meet her, if she visits here or you're able to go to a congress, you must. You'll know it's Elizabeth. She wears a flower in her hair. She comes from the Cook Islands, which are very small islands in the Pacific near Australia, so a long way away. Some of you may know the next lady, that is Annette Kennedy. She is the president of the International Council of Nurses. She sends her apologies today, but we may be able to have a message from her by video. And at the end, the lady at the end is not a nurse, and this is really important. As I said earlier, having people in the audience, in the room, around the table who are not nurses but are supporting what you're doing is very important. So the lady at the end is actually the permanent secretary of Uganda, Diana Atwine, and a great advocate for what's going on with nursing. Next slide. And here, this is one of my favourite pictures, because the lady in the middle, the beautiful young, anybody know who that is?
William's wife.
That is Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, married to Prince William, one of our young princes in England, and she became the campaign's patron for the 3-year duration, not just for England, but across the world. She's there shining a light on nursing for us and with us. And what a privilege it was for me to host that event that day and to meet the Duchess. You yourselves must find champions, your own champions within your country who will do just that for you. Nurses, non-nurses, but find your own champions. So the campaign is a 3-year one. It's run in collaboration with the World Health Organization and the International Council of Nurses. And our partners across the world, the NGOs in particular, from IntraHealth to Japaigo, from the Ahmad-Khan University, and many, many others. Next slide. The campaign's vision is here. It's to improve health globally by raising the profile and status of nursing. Next slide. By influencing the policymakers, and that's something we've been doing this morning, but actually, do you know, of all the countries I visited, this is the one that we did not need to start to influence. They are influenced. They are with you, and they are driving this whole campaign from the Ministry of Health, the presidents, the ministers, and so on. Absolutely fantastic. So well done to you all, and just move with them, just take them with you. Next slide. An important report, another one here that you may want to look up, is the WISH report, World Innovation Summit for Health. It was just launched in November, and it talks about the value and contribution of both nurses and midwives to achieving universal health coverage across the world. So take a look at that. It's very important. Next slide. It talks about how we started off here when we were talking about universal health coverage. We started off here talking about money, and all it needed was an insurance policy in a country for universal health coverage to happen. In fact, we have gone a long way down that spectrum, and we're now at the other end where we know that actually the investment has to be in the workforce, not just putting money and resources in. It has to be about developing the skills of the workforce, in particular nurses. Next slide. So the growing contribution of nursing and midwifery as part of a multidisciplinary team. We must remember we are never alone. We only ever work as part of a team. We might be leading the team, we may not be with the team, but we cannot do it by ourselves. But there are certain things that as nurses and midwives we're going to have to be considering here about the changing burden of disease and what that means to us. More prevention, more health promotion, more getting out there into primary and community care, shifting the services that we deliver and leading the way in doing that. Next slide. I'm going to introduce the campaign board. Many of you will know the World Health Organization divides the world into 6, and you are here in one of the regions, the Eastern Mediterranean region. So in order to choose a board, then we chose people from across the world, 2 people from each part of the world. We tried to choose a nurse and a non-nurse. Next slide, please. So, representing you here, and I know many of you will know him, we have Dr. Hafiz, where are you, Dr. Hafiz? He's bound to be here somewhere. I've seen him this morning, so I know he will be around. And he's from Pakistan here, and we have Professor Roeda from Jordan, and they represent you. One is a nurse and one is a non-nurse. In the whole board, there are 16 countries covered. 2/3 are men, 1/3 are not. 2/3 are women, 1/3 2/3 nurses and 1/3 other professionals, and that's important. So think about that when you're doing your work. Do not have a table full of nurses, have a mixed one, and ensure, if you're talking about health, that nurses have a seat at that table. Next slide. We were also absolutely keen that young nurses must be involved in this. They are the future of our profession, and I can see we've got lots of young nurses here, so welcome to you all, students, young nurses, and nurses who have newly qualified. We are looking forward to meeting you and being part of the campaign. Next slide. So by 2020, we've got a whole set of things that the campaign is set to do, in particular to advocate for greater investment, and we're hearing about that. You need to keep driving that yourselves. We heard the President announce it this morning and the Minister, so keep on, make sure that happens. It's not just something to go in a policy, it's something to happen on the ground. We're going to be changing policies throughout nursing. We know that you're going to be looking at that in your own organisations here in Pakistan. Nurse leadership positions. You should be looking towards having a government level chief nurse here in Pakistan. I don't think there is one at the moment, but we want senior nurses in all positions, skilled to be there. We want you sharing and disseminating all that you're doing. We need the evidence behind nursing and behind why we need more nurses, but it's down to you as nurses and those who support and work with nurses to get that evidence out there. Work with the students, work with the universities, but we're all responsible for providing that and the research that goes with it. Next slide, please. So, what I've been asked all morning, what can we do here in Pakistan? What can we, the nurses and the others, actually do to join this campaign? Next slide. I was very excited on the 27th of June this year when we received this press release to say that here in Pakistan you were beginning to join this movement. And that has led us to today, where you actually launched Nursing Now Pakistan. Next slide. So, there is a website, take a look at this, nursingnow.org. It tells you on there how to get involved. Every single person can join up individually, sign up and get the newsletters. You've already joined as a country, and there are also other smaller organisations within Pakistan who have set up local groups. We call them local supporter groups, and there's already some of those. If you're working and leading a hospital or a university, a school of nursing, then do sign up yourselves, but have a look on the website. The other thing is Twitter. How many of you tweet? Good. Well, I want to see lots more hands in the future going on, not just the young ones. All of us should be doing that. It's a great way of connecting with the world. So join in Twitter, look for Nursing Now 2020. Next slide, please. So, the main aims of the campaign, there we are, we're advocating and building a real movement across the world. We're engaging with a report called The State of the World's Nursing 2020. Dr. Tedros spoke about that this morning. We want good, accurate, robust information that's going to build that report. The International Nurses Day, how many of you celebrate that here? Great. 12th of May next year, we want, this year now, isn't it? We want you all joining in and we want to hear what you're doing. We want you to support the Nightingale Challenge. That is about developing your young nurses, and we'll tell you much more about that. But we want every organisation to be providing new opportunities for the development of their young nurses. And we want you to make 2020 a real year for celebration. It's the 200th birth year of Florence Nightingale, and we are going to be celebrating it across the world. So we want Pakistan to join in. Next slide. So, next slide, please. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at: services, influential leadership, legislation, regulation, education and policy, and the investment. That's what you're going to be doing here, and we're very excited to be hearing more about all of those things in Pakistan. Next slide. So I'm just going to go through these. You can work them on as we go. Nursing Now England was the last place to launch. Next one. Here we are in Sweden in November, across Europe. They've launched it in many countries. Next slide. There they were in Kenya, and we've had lots of the African countries. Already they march out on the street shouting Nursing Now. Next slide. All of the African countries here have already set up and joined. We have 120 groups across the world. 70 countries. I think you might be number 71. So all join Nursing Now. Next slide. Here they are, Jordan, Qatar, Malaysia, China. Next slide. The Pacific, this was somewhere in the middle with the flower in her hair. You'll see Elizabeth Iro. Next slide. All around the world, you're joining this movement of excitement and engagement, and I want you all to be part of that. They are all looking to see how can they improve and strengthen nurses and nursing. Next slide. 17 states in Mexico, and that's a real challenge for you here. We can't just launch here today in Islamabad. This has to spread across every province in Pakistan. And it's going to be up to you to start that ball rolling. Start spreading it out. Take the message, engage the people. Everybody must be and needs to be doing it. Next slide. That one there was a fantastic one. It was in Korea where they had 5,000 people at the event, like you today, but 5,000. And the last slide, please. Thank you. This was Uganda, and the young nurses all shouting and cheering. So here you can see the details about where you can connect. What would we say? We'll finish off by saying thank you for all your efforts. Thank you for inviting me to come here all the way from England. It's been an absolute privilege to come and be with you, and I hope to be with you along the rest of the journey. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hanaway, for letting us know the global perspective of nursing now on the planet. We all are inspired by your great efforts and services toward the profession. Thank you. Now, I would like to introduce our next renowned speaker, Professor Dr. Yasmin Amarsi. She has been a nurse for about 50 years, 10 years at Jinnah Hospital and about 40 years at AKU. She has worked as a nurse in various fields of education, research, and practice. Professor Amarsi holds 2 PhD degrees, one in health sciences, and a second one, she has an honorary doctorate from University of Canada. A prestigious honorary award was bestowed because of her contribution of nursing education, curriculum development, and strengthening academic system in the developing countries such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, Syria, Kenya, and Uganda. Other awards, fellowships include Gold Medal for the Academic Excellence in 1978, Second Silver Medal for Academic Excellence in 1979, Ahmad-Khan Foundation Travel Award Scholar 1988, the Ahmad-Khan Foundation Scholarship Master Studies in 1992, and Government of Sindh for outstanding contribution in the field of health. I cut it short here, so you shouldn't wait more to hear from her. Please welcome Professor Dr. Yasmin Amarsi and give her a big hand of applause. Please come, ma'am, on the stage.
Continue.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished guests, speaker,